This is actually something I wanted to do for a while, just haven't had a chance because we've been working so hard on getting all the production done, getting everything aligned, adapters, chambers, this, that, the other thing. So now that it's all here, released, and ready to go, we'll take a look at some of the items that we have, and I'll go through how to build it, and just some of the things that may come up along the way. So the first thing I'll start with is I have a bare chamber here. It's completely empty. And I'm gonna pop this out. So first off, this is a Floridian coil. And let me grab, I'm trying to just find a loose standard size coil here. All right. Your standard size coil here. This is your Floridian coil. So I'm gonna try to go pretty slow just because I want everybody to kind of take a look at everything here. So a couple differences that you'll notice immediately, of course, is the coil size, it's the lead size. We don't need leads this long, we always trim them off, so we went down to a smaller size. The PTFE sleeves that you see on these coils are here for the use for the Versa. So what I did was they are installed so anybody can use them, but for the Versa, they would remain on. The Peak, you don't need them. Just because we have a ceramic coil base, we don't have to worry about leads passing through. The reason that these are here is the way that the Versa works, the way that the Carter works, and a couple other devices, is the base is essentially milled in to the chamber. And those two leads pass through it. This just helps so it doesn't make a connection with that chamber and short out and ground out. That metal is not, and in the area it's in, is not carrying anywhere near the heat of what these are. So you don't want to have these on when using a Peak, they will melt. So the first thing you're going to do is just pinch them off, and you can either keep them, but most likely you just end up throwing them away. So you'll be left with something like that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 3G Coil Base, and just to show, because I believe that, you know, there could be some confusion, the longer legs are going to go downwards. And what this coil base is doing two things. It's holding the coil, of course, where it's at, but the other thing, the main, I guess the most important thing that we see when building is if the leads are not bent completely flush and straight, and this goes down into the chamber, what's gonna happen is those leads being bent under here are gonna touch in the bottom of here, and you're gonna get those flashes. You're gonna get 5 flashes. And basically what's telling you is that there's metal touching metal, there's a dead short, and the device recognizes that and it will not fire it. So, going forward from there, what we'll do is we'll go ahead and get this installed. And very simple. My hands shake, I have horrible vision. So while I don't want to say easy, definitely not easy, after you do it once, twice, 3 times, it becomes repetitive, it becomes easy. You know, it's just something that you do. So I'm going to use my tweezers, and what I tell everybody is you want to make sure that they're not snug. These coils will expand when they heat, and they expand in comparison a lot, right? And what can happen is if they are too snug, if you wrench this down on the ear, this coil will begin to expand and it'll tear the leads out. It'll just rip the leads right free just because it hasn't anywhere to go. So just laying it like that will be completely fine. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ceramic tweezers, and right at the bottom of the base, I'm going to bend, but like I said, I'm not yanking down or applying pressure where it's strapping the coil down. So the first thing I'm going to end up is with something like this. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing with this lead. I'm doing this a little bit differently than the video because I find one way may work for one person, another way may work for another person. So now we're left with something like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that one lead away from the other one so it's not too close together, but I'm still centralizing them. So, see what we got going on there? And what I'm going to do is, just by looking at it, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to take the top lead, and I'm going to name that. I'm going to select that as my center lead, the one that's going to run right down the middle. And what we'll do is, actually, you know what? Change that. This one is going to be better going here. And it doesn't matter which one you choose. Just to say, you know, polarity does not make a difference. You could choose any as your positive, any as your negative. So what I want to show is if your bends end up like this, what's going to happen is this wire is going to touch the bottom of the housing, and that's where you're going to get your short. So all I'm doing is I'm going to take my time and I'm going to use my tweezers, and I'm just going to position. By taking extra time on your coils, they will last. You know, I just blew my first Floridian coil after about a month and a half last night. It was actually one of the reasons that I drove here. So now you're going to see you end up with something much tighter. Trying to get it. It's almost like an L. However, so that's going to be my positive. The next one I'm going to do is going to be my negative lead. Or actually, saying this, the peak's a little different, but positive and negative. Positive actually goes to the threading on this device. Negative is the pin. It's a little different than other devices, but that's a different video. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select for my negative, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on the corner. And I'm just using my tweezers to straighten back out my build. So I end up with something like this. So the wires are very close together. See how close they are? And they don't sit above any of the feet. And this is something that I'll continue to correct and clean as through the build process. So this is where I'm going to do it both ways just to show. So we have jigs. They work great. You can sit the coil in there. You can drop this over top of it. You can continue to do your build, right? The way that I do it, and it's all going to be preference, and it's going to be just, I guess, as you go and get better with it. But what I'll do is I'll take this and I'll just drop it inside like so. See, use the jig. All right, so I'll drop it in like so, and then what I do is I look on the bottom side, and then whichever I selected as my negative or my positive in this manner, I keep saying it because it's literally backwards. I'm going to choose whichever is closer to that notch. And I'm just looking, so I want to spin this. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing the leads, I'm spinning it, and I'm using my finger to hold it in place. And now that I have it where I want it, I don't know how well this is going to show. But what I'm going to do is the one that I selected is I'm going to, once I verify my coil is straight, fold it over. And same thing, my finger's been inside. You can use your thumb, you can use your finger, you can use a jig if you have one. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change kind of what's been the normal for a really long time. Normally, we would go and we would put this insulator on over the one lead like so. So the one that's cut is to the outside. This one is in the center here, you can see. And then we trim it. What I've noticed just through time is the trimming is actually what can kind of throw everything off. If it's too long, you can push it in, you can cause connection issues. So just in the last day, because of what I've seen coming up, we're gonna change it a little bit. So it's just the cutting procedure. We're gonna cut before we insert our insulator. And the reason why is I wanna try to get the pin or the lead as short as possible, so when we insert that pin, it doesn't push it back up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my clippers and I have them this way, right? And what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to clip down inside of the connection like that. See, it doesn't stick out. I've actually clipped it. Yeah, there you go, you can barely see it. So it's just hanging in there. Mind you, my finger's still on it. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my insulator over. It'll be much easier. You won't have a pin sticking out. And then you'll be left with something like this. You do not want the insulator to protrude at all. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna check to see where that pin is. And since that lead is kind of directly in the middle, I don't want it to be, and what I'm doing is I'm just pushing it to the other side, away from the negative connection. Lastly, what I'll do is I'll look in there, I'll take my brass pin, and away from the pin, I'm gonna push it in, but mind you, see how my finger has never left this spot. So now, you'll be left with a complete and straight atomizer. And the last thing that you need to do, always clip away from you, clip towards the ground. You don't want one to fling at you. So now you can see it is cut as flush as possible. The pin's even, everything looks good, the coil's straight. It can still go on to the jig. So the next thing I'll talk about is top caps. Just because before we dive into Floridian, adapters, so on and so on, I'll talk about the top cap. The top cap has always been, actually scratch that, let me grab something. The top cap has been my nemesis for a long time. I don't like the stock top cap, whatever you want to call it. You know, it's a band, it's a cap, it's a band, it's a top cap, it's two pieces. This is what I've been working on for a long time. And I get flustered with it, and I'll tell you why. Each chamber, each piece of metal, the tolerances, just down to micrometers, of how this cap is gonna fit on everybody's device, this was the best option. A rubber ring just slides on it. Doing something that, like I said, from V2 to V3, and then each V3 batch, each tolerance of the machining is different. So you could have some fit and others not, but you want where it's gonna seal and give you a nice connection, but still be able to come free. So where we stand with the top caps, just to go off a little bit, is I actually messed up a measurement. So right here, where is it? These little tabs right here, I increased the size because I also changed, you see how beveled? Where's the stock one? You're not gonna be able to see this right here. This is more beveled. It's meant to hold bubble caps, ball caps way, way better. So we're done with this right now. Going back to top caps, the next thing I'm gonna show you is, because of these top caps being silicone, they stretch out extremely fast when you start increasing the heat. The ceramic tops retain heat so well that they stretch these bands quick. I mean, the stock Puffco bands, I don't know, 10, 15 dabs or so, and it's pretty loose. And what I'll say is, as this gets looser, the overall fitment for everything goes down. The performance goes down. Things aren't flush, things aren't tight. All of this depends on surface transfer heat. So let me grab, actually I have them right here. I'm gonna grab a Floridian, if I can pop it open. And for example, like I said, each piece needs to be, all the pieces rely on each other all the way up. from the coil to the adapter to the insert to the ceramic top cap. It's all important all the way up. So the reason that I'm saying this is the stock Puffco cap, which we all know and love. This is what I have. This is a replacement top cap, just the silicone piece for an SOCE rig. It is thicker, it's heavier, it's knurled. It's also just a different material and elasticity of silicone. I have used these for quite some time. The issue is never being able to obtain them outside of getting atomizers and things like that. With some agreements and negotiation now, we have the ability to have these. With that, we also now have a much larger, and no, I don't want to say much larger, a wider, slightly wider top cap ring that also has a channel cut into it. I don't know if you can see in comparison. So normally we have these tabs that are on the inside. This one has a channel. So when this sits on here, let's see if I can get it better. You end up with a wider in comparison to this, because this is made for the original bucket. And these work fine. So with all that said, there's a couple ways that you can assemble the Floridian. I do it multiple ways, so I'm gonna grab my new top cap and I'm gonna put this ceramic piece in. And one thing that you'll notice once this is all in here is it angles inwards. It almost grips. So when this goes on here, you can find where it needs to be and give you a nice seal, a tighter seal, a thicker seal on your Puffco V3 atomizer. So a couple of people have asked, how do I install it? Which way can I install it? Install it however. As long as the coil is cold, you can install it pretty much any way you want. Whether it's taking it and just dropping the coin in like that. Oh, I just twisted it, but obviously flat, but you want it to be in there if it doesn't keep falling on me. Because the reason that we can do this is the SICK is always going to be the thing to realign it. The SICK and the top cap, I take my SICK, I just look at the coin and it just drops right on there. So now my SICK and my coin are in there. I can realign it, and I'm just going to take my top cap. Normally this would be inside the device. Actually, let's do that. So I'm going to drop this back on there. Drop my SICK back on, take my top cap, and all I'm doing is I'm just looking to see where the teeth align on it and dropping it back on, like so. And I'm just gonna use my finger, my pinky to line everything up nicely. And then you end up with something like this. No rattles, everything's nice and even. You can use your pinky to further align everything. And then normally what I'll do is I'll do a dry cycle, fire everything, make sure everything's working properly. We'll go back again, so let's take this off. Let's put on this ring when this is a brand new original Puffco V3 ring. I'm just gonna recenter this and I'm gonna put my top cap on. Just align it with the teeth. And same thing, I'm just gonna use my pinky. Get it nice and aligned. And you end up with the same thing, nice and tight. However, I will say with this channel in there, the thicker band, for what we have it for, it's a night and day difference. So I'm gonna take this off and I'm gonna use my tweezers, take out my SICK. I never wanna pull it. If it's If it doesn't ever come free on its own, blue cycle, wait till all the oil heats up and then pull it out. Same thing, I'll use my tweezers and I can take out my coin. We'll do a dry cycle. From now on, also, I want to say the resetting, some people get a little reset happy with. This one's going to be dead. Watch. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, it's definitely dead. Clicking it multiple times like that won't do anything. Let me plug this in real quick and let's see if we can get a charge. When I tell you we are out of magnetic chargers for the Peak, I mean it. Or else I'd be using one right now. Yeah, let's see if we can get this sucker back on and get it working. Quick reset on the charger. So I'm going to stretch the coil. I'm going to pulse the coil. I was hoping I'll at least get one out of it. Well, I guess we're going to do a coil pulsing video and finish the Floridian build once this charges, because this is the only Peak I have here right now that works. I have other ones. All right, I'll be back.